This is a conversation between Maharaj Parikshit and Sukadeva Goswami. Maharaj Parikshit, 5,000 years ago, he was the emperor of the whole world. Formerly, up to 5,000 years ago, the whole world was being controlled and ruled over by kings whose capital was Hastinapur, New Delhi. There was only one flag, only one ruler, one scripture, Vedic scripture, and the Aryans, Arya, they were the civilized persons. You, Europeans, Americans, you are also Aryans, Indo-European stock. Maharaj Dajasi, grandson of Maharaj Parikshit, he gave to his two sons the portion of Eastern Europe, Greek and Roman. That is the history. Mahabharata. Mahabharata means Great India. So, there was no different religion, one religion, Vedic religion. Vedic religion means to accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the Supreme Person, Absolute Truth. This is Vedic religion. Those who have read Bhagavad Gita, it is said there in the 15th chapter, Vedaishta sarvai ahamiva vedyam. Vedic knowledge means to understand God. This is Vedic. Later on, with the progress of Kali Yuga, Kali Yuga means the dark age or the sinful age, or the age for argument, unnecessary talks and fight. This is called Kali Yuga. That is going on. Since the last 5,000 years, the Kali Yuga has begun, and the beginning of Kali Yuga was cow slaughtering. So, at the present moment, practically there is no Brahmin, no Kshatriya, no Vaishya, only Shudras, fourth class men. So you cannot expect any happiness guided by the fourth class men. That is not possible. Therefore, throughout the whole world, there is chaotic condition. Nobody is happy. So, this is essential that the human society must be divided into 4 divisions. The Brahmin class means the first class ideal man, so that by the seeing their character, their behavior, others will try to follow. Jad jad acharati shrestha. So this Krishna consciousness movement means we are trying to create some first class man. This is Krishna consciousness, this movement.
If you look at the charts for all the markers of family pathology, divorce,
no
teenage
illicit
child
sex,
rearing,
no
percentage of
nudity,
children who are reared without
no
two parents and so on.
no bad.
All of them
This
start
is the
going up around
preliminary
1965,
qualification of a first
which is
class.
they're at the center, the beginning really of the Cultural Revolution in our society. It's interesting that if you go back to say 1920, that at that time almost nobody had premarital sex. Divorce was unheard of. It was very hard to get a divorce. It was simply not socially sanctioned. If you look at the behavior genetics literature, you find that there was no genetic influence on age of first sexual intercourse. What this means is that the only real important force was culture, because everybody was reared in this Christian culture, and in which premarital sex was proscribed, so that it didn't matter what your genetic tendencies were. In other words, you could be the kind of person who was strongly attracted to that, but you still couldn't do it anyway because the culture was totally clamped down on that. After 1965, there started to be a strong genetic influence. In other words, some people could sort of deal with this new cultural environment where there were relatively few controls on sexuality. Other people could not. And so what you see now is that people who are prone to impulsivity, people who can't control their sexuality and so on, these are the people who are, having sex when they're teenagers, they're getting pregnant, they're taking drugs, they're drinking, doing all these things because the culture has made it possible to do that. Those genetic tendencies were always present in the population, but that did not result in much difference in behavior because of the strong cultural controls. After 1965, those controls were washed away. And so now, whether or not you engage in sexual intercourse, say in high school, teenage pregnancy, and dropping out, all those things are much more under genetic influence than they used to be. So there are still an awful lot of children who do not get into that stuff. But these are the people who tend to be relatively controlled, non-impulsive, more intelligent, and so on. So the fact that there's been such a huge deterioration of culture has had a much greater impact at the lower end of the IQ distribution and the lower end of the impulsivity. Those people need more cultural support. And so the impact of the Cultural Revolution most strongly on the people at the lower end of the IQ distribution, the lower end of the sort of personal control distribution.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of democracy very briefly here. I think it's pretty safe to say that all of us, when we're, from the time we're young to the time we're old, we are taught that democracy is the greatest gift to mankind since sliced bread. I mean, it's pretty much the greatest thing on earth. The freedom to vote is the greatest freedom we have, according to that bum that lost. What was his name? Juan McCain? Yeah, him. Of course, this is actually kind of a revisionist idea. I'm going to go a little bit to the history here. As everyone probably knows, there was one of the city-states in ancient Greece was a democracy for a little while, and that was Athens. And it was a democracy for a while, and then the Spartans came in and pretty much took them over. That was after the Peloponnesian War, the conclusion of the 26-year conflict between Athens and Sparta. During this time and previously, there have been lots of people, the wisest people, that discussed all of the political systems, and none seem to speak very highly of democracy. In fact, Socrates said, "Democracy, which is a charming form of government full of variety and disorder, and dispensing a sort of equality to equals and unequaled alike," and essentially equated it with mob rule. And then, you'll go throughout, another several thousand years, and people will have read Aristotle Plato, Socrates, and other philosophers, and none of them happened to think very highly of democracy, but they all examined it. And then you'll find, that Herodotus mentioned that the Persians considered democracy and seemed to not think very highly of the idea. Of course, in China, there was a long tradition of Confucianism, which was a much more natural and holistic worldview than democracy, that thrived there for millennia. Nobody seemed to have the will to create a democracy unless you're prejudicial enough to think that they were incapable of thinking of such a foundation. It's not really a complicated system when you think about it. The majority wins, the minority doesn't win. And then we get to the United States, and that's where things seem to change, supposedly. Well, the founding fathers of America never mentioned the word democracy once in the Constitution. In fact, Edmund Burke, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin all seem to have rather unfriendly views towards democracy. So when the Constitution was written, a very small percentage of men could vote. And by the way, in ancient Athens, only free men could vote. Women, children, and slaves could not vote, and they were certainly the majority. I don't know the percentage of slaves in Athens, but in Sparta, I believe it was 7-1. The Helots were the slaves, and the Spartans were the other 1 out of 8 population, which is about 12.5%, I think, that were citizens. So it might be safe to say that there were more slaves from the Pelasgian indigenous population than Dorians and Ionians, which were the two main ethnic groups of the Greeks. Anyway, democracy was not considered this great thing by any of the classic liberals either, especially Locke and Hobbes. Nobody considered it to be such a great idea. However, it did come into play heavily when the major turning point when the world became democratic was World War I, where when America came into World War I, it decided that it did it for power reasons. Number one is that everybody knows that certain governments that are similar are more friendly towards each other. So if every country has an oligarchy, then there will be quote-unquote peace. If every country is a democracy, there'll be quote-unquote peace. Democracies don't go to war with each other. Supposedly, at least in the last 60 years or something. So as a result, there were the Habsburg monarchy of Austria was seen as the enemy by Woodrow Wilson, and therefore they said, we're going to make the world safe for democracy. We're going to remake the world in our image. And that's essentially what they did. There were about 2 or 3 democracies in the world before World War I, and then after that, you'll see more and more democracies come into play, either subtly or explicitly by the coercion of the United States. And then this, as everybody knows, probably what's popping into your mind now is Iraq.